the dagger there.
Then I shall die as one of them.
You can say that again, Legolas. You can say that again. Natha Dagathaya. The first time I watched Lord of the Rings, and the following, 20 to 30 other times I've watched it since, I've always shared Legolas's sentiment here. Every single man in Rohan looks like they're going to die. Some have seen too many winters, others have seen too few winters, and others only have one eye. Not that they can't fight or anything, but I'm sure it doesn't help if you have no peripheral vision out of one side of your face for the entire battle. But Rohan just seems weak in the movie. It seems like they have no real warriors at Helm's Deep. And when the elves came in, it felt like the only hope for this ragtag bunch of farmers. But I am reading the books for the first time in my life, which is a shameless plug for anyone wanting to follow along on my journey by subscribing to the channel. There are lots of other video essays that I've made about my first time read experience, and from reading for the first time, I kind of think Rohan is significantly stronger in the book. Not only do they have warriors who are menacing, they also almost fight back the orcs on their own before the reinforcements come, but that's for the end of the essay. Yes, the book still has the line that there are some who have seen too many winters or too few winters in Rohan, but all in all, the kingdom of men in Rohan is significantly stronger in the book than the movie. And I think it actually makes a much more compelling battle scene than the movies have. In the film, when you get this battle, you just have a bunch of rough men picking up weapons. And it looks like there's not a single warrior in the bunch. And then after this little verbal spat between Legolas and Aragorn,
Then I shall die as one of them.
there's some tension. Aragorn goes to put on his armor and get ready for the battle, and then you hear,
That is no Orcorn.
the elves from Lothlorien have come,
We are proud to fight alongside men once more.
but this is nowhere in the book. I mean, okay, I'll say this one thing. I think I know where Peter Jackson got this idea from, but nowhere do elves come and fight in Helm's Deep anywhere in the book. This is the concept where I think Peter Jackson got it from. It comes from a passage in the book that Legolas and Gimli are kind of just sitting on the wall, wishing that they had people from their own homes to come and fight. This is where you get it in the book. Gimli stood leaning against the breastwork upon the wall. Legolas sat above on the parapet, fingering his bow and peering out into the gloom. This is more to my liking, said the dwarf, stamping on the stones. Ever my heart rises as we draw near the mountains. There is good rock here. This country has tough bones. I felt them in my feet as we came up from the dike. Give me a year and 100 of my kin, and I would make this place that armies would break upon like water. I do not doubt it, said Legolas, but you are a dwarf, and dwarves are strange folk. I do not like this place, and I shall like it no more by the light of day. But you come for me, Gimli, and I am glad to have you standing nigh, with your stout legs and your hard axe. I wish there were more of your kin among us, but even more would I give for 100 good archers of Mirkwood. We shall need them. The Rohirrim have good bowmen after their fashion, but there are too few here, too few. It's dark for archery, said Gimli. Indeed, it is time for sleep. Sleep, I feel the need of it, as I never thought any dwarf could. Riding is tiring work, yet my axe is restless in my hand. Give me a row of orc necks and room to swing, and all weariness will fall from me. Now those lines alone, while I would love to see both of them happening, that'd be so cool, are likely the lines for why Jackson made the decision he made. And I don't disagree with his decision, but Jackson seems to work in extremes. Either a kingdom is healthy and thriving, or it is in complete disarray and falling apart as Rohan is. And so rather than show a semi-strong kingdom of Rohan, as the books kind of do, again, even though many of those soldiers are either too young or too old, Jackson decides to show a bunch of farmers. And you are certain that these men will die tonight. Honestly, it is a good bit of filmmaking to be able to kind of dash your hope away from you before the battle begins, so that the moment that Gandalf comes is even more victorious. But again, the books just show a much more complete and solid kingdom in Rohan than Jackson and co did. There are mighty warriors on the side of Rohan. The book, in the same line that it mentions where most of the soldiers have seen too many winters, mentions this warrior who I kind of love, even though he's barely on the page. Erkenbrand. This is what the book says. The host passed through the breach and halted on the sloping sward above. They now learned to their joy that Erkenbrand had left many men to hold Helm's Gate. and more had since escaped thither. Maybe we have 1,000 fit to fight on foot, said Gamling, an old man, the leader of those that watched on the dike. But most of them have seen too many winters as I have, or too few as my son's son here. Also, it kind of makes me curious if Gamling's son had died and he was the guardian for his grandson. Anyway, what news of Erkenbrand? Word came yesterday that he is retreating hither with all that is left of the best riders of the Westfold. But he has not come. I fear that he will not come now, said Eomer. Our scouts have gained no news of him, and the enemy fills all the valley behind us. I would that he had escaped, said Theoden. He was a mighty man. In him lived again the valor of Helm the Hammerhand. But we cannot await him here. We must draw all our forces now behind the walls. Now, I think from this passage alone, you get the impression that yes, they're not as strong as the Uruks coming to besiege them, but there are 1,000 of them that can definitely hold their own. There are warriors in their mix too, as Erkenbrand, a fabled warrior, left men to know how to fight. And I have to be honest as well, they won without backup in Helm's Deep. When they decided to ride out in a blaze of glory, that moment seemed to throw all the orcs into a mass hysteria. And I think this could potentially be interpretive, but let me read this whole entire section. It's a long one, so get ready. Let me read this whole section to you so you can kind of make a decision for yourself whether they won the battle themselves or they actually needed the reinforcements to win the battle. There was a roar and a blast of fire. The archway of the gate above, which had stood a moment before, crumbled and crashed into smoke and dust. The barricade was scattered as if by a thunderbolt. Aragorn ran to the king's tower, but even as the gate fell and the orcs about it yelled, preparing to charge, a murmur arose behind them, like a wind in the distance, and it grew to a clamor of many voices crying strange news in the dawn. The orcs upon the rock, hearing the rumor of dismay, wavered and looked back. And then, sudden and terrible, from the tower above, the sound of the great horn of Helm rang out. All that heard that sound trembled. Many of the orcs cast themselves on their faces and covered their ears with their claws. Back from the deep the echoes came, blast upon blast, as if on every cliff and hill a mighty herald stood. But on the walls men looked up, listening with wonder, for the echoes did not die. Ever the horn blasts wound on among the hills. Nearer now and louder they answered one to another, blowing fierce and free. Helm, Helm, the riders shouted. Helm has arisen and comes back to war. Helm for Theoden king. And with that shout the king came. His horse was white as snow. Golden was his shield and his spear was long. At his right hand was Aragorn, Elendil's heir. Behind him rode the lords of the house of Orel the young. Light sprang in the sky. Night departed. Forth, Erlingus! With a cry and a great noise they charged. Down from the gates they roared. Over the causeway they swept. And they drove through the host of Isengard as a wind among grass. Behind them, from the deep, came the stern cries of men issuing from their caves, driving forth the enemy. Out poured all the men that were left upon the rock, and ever the sound of blowing horns echoed in the hills. On they rode, the king and his companions. Captains and champions fell or fled before them. Neither orc nor man withstood them. Their backs were to the swords and spears of the riders, and their faces to the valley. They cried and wailed, for fear and great wonder had come upon them with the rising of the day. So King Theoden rode from Helm's Gate and clove his path to the great dike. There the company halted. Light grew bright about them. Shafts of the sun flared above the eastern hills and glimmered on the spheres. But they sat silent on their horses, and they gazed down upon the deeping coombe. The land had changed. Where before the green dale had lain, its grassy slopes lapping the ever-mounted hills, there now a forest loomed. Great trees, bare and silent, stood rank on rank, with tangled boughs and hoary heads. Their twisted roots were buried in the long green grass. Darkness was under them. Between the dike and the eaves of that nameless wood, only 2 open furlongs lay. There now cowered the proud hosts of Saruman, in terror of the king and the terror of the trees. They streamed down from Helm's Gate until all above the dike was empty of them. But below it, they were packed like swarming flies. Vainly they crawled and clambered about the walls of the coombe, seeking to escape. Upon the east, too sheer and stony was the valley's side. Upon the left, from the west, their final doom approached. There suddenly upon a ridge appeared a rider, clad in white, shining in the sun. Over the low hills the horns were sounding. Behind him, hastening down the long slopes, were 1,000 men on foot. Their swords were in their hands. Amid them strode a man, tall and strong. His shield was red. As he came to the valley's brink, he set it to his lips a great black horn and blew a ringing blast. So, based on that whole passage, I'd probably say that Rohan had won the battle even before Erkenbrand and Gandalf came with 10,000 foot soldiers. The foot soldiers just kind of seem like a cleanup crew. And this is just a byline of Peter Jackson's work, I think, in that he tends toward drama in weakness up against strength rather than in two kingdoms that are both strong, that are both fighting each other. And the whole time I'm reading, I just keep thinking that the kingdom of Rohan is far cooler and stronger in the book. It makes me like the kingdom so much. So much so that I even bought a flag of Rohan, and I am planning to put it on my flag post outside my apartment very soon so that all know that this is a place of strength. Well, you'd at least know that if you read the books. But anyway, make sure you like the video, subscribe, become a member, and I'll see you in the next one.